Good afternoon, everyone. If I have your attention, please. I think it's pretty close to, better check my clock, see if it is noon or not. But we're going to get started. The bus from the UP is here, so the party can begin. So no, in all, though, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for joining us here today. And as many of you know, I'm Carl Bednarski, president of the Michigan Farm Bureau, and with my wife Lisa and our three sons, we farm in Tuscola County. We raise corn, soybeans, dry beans, sugar beets, and wheat. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time from your work, from your farms, from your families, and from your businesses that you took that time out to come here to be part of a Farm Bureau event. And I thank you very much for doing that. And also on behalf of the board of directors that are here and the staff, you know, we put this together for you. This, you give us joy by letting us be able to provide this format for you and to have it, all of you get together with the same interest. So thank you. Also, as you know, we appreciate your investment to learn more about the legislative and regulatory impacts affecting Michigan agriculture, and for lending your voice to help convey our policy position with decision makers. It's nice to see that we have close to 400 individuals here today representing 64 of our 65 county farm bureaus. That's outstanding, so thank you very much. Also this evening, though, we're going to have approximately 100 guests that will be joining us. And those individuals will be our legislators and our regulatory leaders that will be attending. We're particularly excited to provide a rare opportunity, as many of you know, to hear from some special guests joining us from Washington. So, yeah, we're all excited about that. And we're also excited to have 4 of our top legislative leaders joining us today from the state in a panel discussion. It's great to have them here also. So with that, we're going to get the program underway, and I'd like to welcome your State Young Farmer Chairman, Adam Dietrich, to come forward, and Adam will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Adam?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Adam. Next, I'd like to welcome our State P&E Chairperson, Julie Stevenson, to the stage, and she will lead us in the invocation for today's dinner. Julie?
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the chance to gather today. May everything we think, say, and do begin and end with your inspiration. Guide us to find opportunity and strength in each other throughout this day, and help us engage in meaningful discussions, especially as they relate to our precious farms and businesses. Grant us grace and travel mercies as we depart later, and be with those who tend to our families and farms. Bless this meal and all who have grown, prepared, and served it. May it nourish us to serve your will throughout the day. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Julie, for that invocation. Now, it's time to prepare for our panel discussion. So please note on your tables there are index cards available for questions. Write them down and raise your hand, and there will be staff floating around the room that will collect them so we can try to get them asked to our panel. Also, speaking of your issues that you have here today and what keeps you up at night, you know, we have a busy year ahead of us. You guys keep us on our toes, and we'll do our best to move forward as this year proceeds. In the coming months, though, we'll be working with our legislative partners on a new state budget, guided by the priorities that all of you set. Also, that budget, that infamous budget that we're all concerned about, must be addressed the needs of Michigan's rural communities, farms, agribusinesses, and others that contribute to the state's economic well-being. So with that, we'll continue to work with our legislative executive branch and agencies on issues that benefit, or in some cases hinder, our ability to provide food, fiber, and fuel. As you well know, it's 2020, so we'll also be engaged in this year's election process. Your county farm bureaus will be evaluating candidates running for office and support the election of Friends of Agriculture. Some of you who may be running yourselves, or some of you that are interested in political office outside of that are farmers. We encourage that and thank you for taking the lead on opportunities like that. Let's use today's energy to energize your county farm bureaus and push for results that benefit Michigan agriculture. It's a great opportunity. It's a great day. We have a lot in store for you, and we should have an exciting day for all of you to remember. With that, I'm pleased to welcome District 6 Director Mike DeRuyter to come forward and introduce some of our special guests that are in attendance. So, Mike.
All right, well, thank you, Carl. And today we're very fortunate to have 4 of the leaders from Michigan House and Senate to discuss priorities for the year ahead, as well as take some of the questions from the audience. So, without further ado, let's welcome them all to the stage with a nice Farm Bureau welcome. So in no particular order, we have Senator Roger Victory with us, who serves constituents in Ottawa County, an active farmer and Farm Bureau member. Senator Victory is a first-term senator following 3 terms in the House, and he also chairs the Senate Agricultural Appropriations Subcommittee. Next up, we have Speaker of the House, Lee Chatfield, and Lee is in his 3rd term representing the 107th District, which includes Chippewa, Emmett, Mackinac, and part of Sheboygan County. We also have Senator Winnie Brinks with us today. And Senator Winnie Brinks is in her 1st term representing the 29th District, which includes portions of Kent County and the city of Grand Rapids. And last but not least, we have House Democratic leader Christine Gregg, who is in her 3rd term representing the 37th District, which includes Farmington and Farmington Hills and Oakland County. So let's give them one more round of applause for joining us today. So as a reminder, there is index cards at your table, so if you guys have any questions, please write those down. And we are going to have roaming staff, so if you don't mind, when you get your question, just hold it up. The roaming staff will get them. We'll get them up front. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can. We'd like to begin by asking our guests to share a brief outlook and their priorities for the year. And in no particular order, Mr. Chatfield, if you don't mind, start us off.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the chance to be here. It is great to speak with your group, and I want to let you all know that you guys have an incredible organization here in Lansing fighting on your behalf and promoting your industry. And it's important for us in the legislature. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different experiences. So anytime we're dealing with this industry, it's important that we're listening to the professionals within the industry. So thank you for being here. You guys have an incredible group. And I have to say at the onset here, we've heard a few remarks about farmers in the past couple of weeks coming out of Washington and coming on the campaign trail. And I want to be serious when I say, unlike what some people running for president have said, I don't think farming is an easy job. I don't think that anyone in the country can do it. And when billionaire Bloomberg is riding around in his private jet eating a steak that came from the hard work, sweat, and tears of many of you in the room. So thank you for your work, and thank you for making something very profitable for our country. But something that I said very early on in 2019 when we first entered this term, we have divided government. We have Republican control of the legislature, and we have Democratic control of the administration, and that's okay. What we vowed to do at the very beginning of this year was to not be like Washington. And the very first conversation I ever had with Governor Whitmer went something like this. You and I can either share in the credit for things getting done this year in our state, or we can share in the blame for nothing getting done. And at the end of the day, though I'm a conservative Republican, and I'm not shy about the principles I believe in, I'd rather see our state succeed than see her administration fail. And that'll mean that we need to work together. That will mean that we need to reach a consensus. And that's a commitment from all of us here on this panel and in our state, that we can work together. As for personal priorities, there's three main ones for me heading into this year. Number one, we need to fix our infrastructure. And when people ask me what the number one problem is, for me, it's simple. Step one needs to be this. We need to make sure that all the taxes that are paid at the pump go towards the roads. We're one of only 2 states that do that. We have 3 taxes at the pump, and not all that money goes to roads. Rather than focusing on the symptom, which is a pothole, we have to focus at the root of the problem. The fact is, it's common sense. It doesn't take rocket science, and every single person, when they fill up at the pump, expect that that money will go towards roads. We need to fix that first. Number 2, criminal justice reform and mental health reform are tied together. We need to ensure that we're not over-criminalizing the people here in our state, and we need to ensure that those who are looking to re-enter society have the skills ready to assume the jobs that are available. We all remember what it was like in Michigan 10 years ago. There were no jobs. Now we need to ensure that we have the skilled labor to assume those jobs. And though crime has decreased 50% in our state over the past 30 years, our jail population has tripled. We're doing something wrong. Corrections was once 3% of our general fund budget. It's now 20% of our general fund budget. We can do better for the people of our state. And also, a big priority of mine is ensuring that the legislation we passed last term to allow for the construction of an underground corridor for Line 5 actually is followed through, and this administration honors the word that was passed, the bills that were passed, and the word that was given to Enbridge. We need to ensure that those energy resources make their way to the people of our state. Most people don't know this. Michigan has the highest amount of residential homes in the country that use propane. We need to ensure that these energy resources are delivered in a safe way while protecting the Great Lakes. The underground corridor is the way to do it. So those are a few of my personal priorities that I'm working on. Sounds pretty easy, and I look forward to working with Democrats and Republicans to get it done. So thanks for having me here.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for inviting me today. I'm Christine Gregg. I represent Farmington and Farmington Hills. But I started to wonder, my district doesn't have a lot of agricultural in it, but that's why I think it's so important to be here with you today, and thank you for your support of me personally in the past. I grew up in rural Indiana. I'm one of 12 children. Grew up with a lot of different farming families as well, and saw how the agriculture was the heart of our community and how important it was to the economy as well. So grew up with a really strong appreciation. In fact, my youngest sister lives in the house that we all grew up in with that cornfield still behind us, as a constant reminder of the value of the work that you do and how important it is to our states and to our country as well. So thank you for what you do for a living. After that, I moved to Chicago actually for 7 years out of college, and I worked in a more urban environment. And then I landed here in Michigan in the suburbs 30 years ago and raised my family here. And what I try to bring to the discussion is that we are recognizing that we are one state with many different areas of that state with different industries, different jobs, different needs, and how do we find that balance in state government to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to thrive and prosper. And it's no small feat. The speaker and I have worked on a lot of issues together where we can see that we can come together and really move everything forward or move policy forward for the good of everyone in Michigan. We have a lot of work to do. And my priorities for 2020 is working with the speaker and making sure that we do get a budget to the governor that takes care of our needs in this state and get it done by July 1st, as we have committed to do with legislation last year. We also have to address the infrastructure. I thought that was an excellent point that the speaker made, that that is the heart, again, of how we transport goods, how we get to church, how we get to work, how we get to recreation. We have to have strong infrastructure. to make sure that the state and our families in the state thrive. So incredibly important. And then also education. Every child, regardless where they live, needs to have the tools to succeed in any area that they have that passion for. We really need to look at how to properly fund our education system. We need to make sure that we have the resources. The speaker mentioned mental health as being so incredibly important. You know, it starts with our kids. It absolutely starts with our kids, and we need to have nurses, we need to have counselors, we need to have those frontline resources in our schools to make sure that every child has the opportunity to succeed and grow and be cherished. And I think we've not done a good job of that with funding in our state, and I hope to work on that this year too. There's a lot to do. I'm going to leave it at that, but again, I want to thank you. We are a strong state. We need to work together. We need to work with the federal government as well as we get through the budget process at the federal level and the state. I'm so thankful that Senator Stabenow is the chair of the agriculture, or the ranking member on the Democratic side of agriculture. She has our backs in Washington, and I think we need as a state to work more closely with our federal delegation as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for inviting us today to have this conversation. I too can attest that the Farm Bureau is a great partner in terms of communicating with us about legislation and about how it impacts your livelihood, but also it impacts all of our constituents. I'm Winnie Brinks. I'm the state senator for the Grand Rapids and half of Kent County area. I am the proud daughter of Dutch immigrant farmers. And I grew up out west, getting up every morning before school, feeding the calves, and coming home after school and feeding the calves again. So I'm no stranger to hard work, and I attribute that to, in no small part, to my success in the legislature as well. There are lots of folks who don't understand good, hard physical labor and the value it can bring to our communities, and I certainly learned that lesson well as a child. All of my siblings are still farmers. They work in hazelnut farming as well as in dairy farms out west mostly. I've got uncles and cousins and all kinds of different perspectives that I can tap into when it comes to farm policy. I think that, well, and I should also say I have a daughter currently at MSU studying horticulture. So we are continuing our tradition of love for ag and plants and all kinds of the good things that has brought to our lives. I think what I'll do is kind of focus on some of the areas that I think that we can work together as a legislature in divided government, as my colleagues in the House have mentioned. We have done on a bipartisan basis the Animal Industry Act update. That was a long effort that had bipartisan support that was recently passed. We also did some work on the loan origination fees for ag disaster in Michigan, and so I was pleased to be part of that and to be having those kinds of conversations with my colleagues. Additional things that I think we need to work on and that I think we have a lot of bipartisan opportunity to work on are skilled trades, things like rural broadband, rural health care, making sure that we continue to have access to that. While I didn't go into farming, I've spent my entire career working in education, nonprofits, healthcare access, and I serve on those committees or have in the state legislature for the last 8 years. So I'm pleased to be part of those conversations, and I see a lot of opportunity for us to continue to work together for the best interest of our constituents, including rural as well as urban constituents. Challenges that we face that don't have easy answers. I think infrastructure is obviously on that list, but high water is also a huge concern that's having a massive impact on our ability to maintain the ag industry and posing many challenges. So those are not easy things to tackle. Forces that are greater than the state legislature certainly are at work here. So we need to find every way that we can to work together. And I can say that we've got some good partners here on the stage as well as other members of the legislature, and I am eager to get to work on some of those challenges as well.
Well, good afternoon. I'm State Senator Roger Victory, and it's a pleasure to be here. It just seems like yesterday I was sitting among you in the for one of the Lansing legislative days for Farm Bureau. My roadmap to sitting up on this stage was right through the grassroots effort of Farm Bureau, Michigan Farm Bureau, and I was amazed by the organization when I was a member at the grassroots level, and I'm still amazed by the power and the influence and the sensibility of this organization. And I use it as a resource here as I serve the great state of Michigan and also the 30th district, which represents Ottawa County. Also, it's a privilege being with the Dutch caucus up here today. So we do have a Dutch caucus in the Senate, and I think we almost got about 75% participation there. So that's a real privilege. And also, I just had to remark that President Benarski, boy, this is quite some security you have for President Benarski here for this event. I didn't realize that it was that risky of a job being president of Michigan Farm Bureau, but I'm glad you're keeping his health in concern and making sure it's a safe event. Speaking of some things, so I serve as chair of the Appropriations Committee on Agriculture and also vice chair of the policy side. And I appreciate what my colleagues have mentioned here earlier. I'm going to probably highlight a little bit more at the granular level what some issues I'm dealing with. One specifically is water quality and environmental concerns. That kind of blends in with a high water issue. We had testimony this morning in Eagle, highlighting from our water resource manager in Ottawa County, dealing with agricultural interest and with some of the new regulations coming from Eagle with CAFOs and that. And you couldn't ask for that's all at the wrong time. As the livestock producers are trying to deal with their nutrients as a placement, and we have this issue with the high water issue at the same time. That's a very concerning thing. So I think that's something we'll be dealing with. And then also blending with high water issues, it's not just the lake shore issues along the Lake Michigan Huron, but it's our inland lakes and how do we go about that? And then there's a lot of cost related to that. And then where do we go with that water? And is there some areas that we're in agriculture, is there some areas that possibly in wetlands that this water could be stored? So, using some common sense solutions to that. Another critical issue that's on my forefront that this needs to get done is Animal Ag Alliance for Agriculture, or AAA. This is something that the funding is not in the current budget, and as I highlight how influential Michigan Farm Bureau is, hopefully the influence of Michigan Farm Bureau can get this funding taken care of, because this is where we leverage the research. I had good conversation with President Stanley, our new president of Michigan State University. He realized how important research is, and today with our, we're hoping to hear from Vice President Pence. And the system today is if we can leverage these dollars at the state level, we can then leverage additional federal dollars. And this is a program I think that we need to get going because it's based on the model of Project Green. Project Green has been in existence for 20 years. It's modeled by other states, and it's just when we got something good like Project Green going, that we need to get that across the finish line. Also, just improving markets for Michigan ag products. Michigan is one of the most diverse states in production of agricultural items, and it's like the low-hanging fruit. We grow it here, but we should also create an environment that we can continue to process it here and remove those barriers for that occurring. And also one issue that's been here for decades, and we're going to be focusing on is bovine TB. So with that there, I'm looking for some good questions, and great to be here.
Good. Well, thank you, panelists, for your opening comments and sharing some of your perspective on the upcoming year. We'll jump right into the questions. I got a couple up here. I'll start right off. So the question is, are you aware of the new draft CAFO permit and the negative impact it could have? And what can you do or we do to get Eagle to issue a more reasonable permit?
Yeah, I'll kind of kick that one off. Yes, I'm very much aware of it. I have attended some of the hearings, public comment hearings on that, and was pleased to see that at the Grand Rapids hearing, we had a number of members from the agricultural community giving testimony on it. This is something, these are rules being promulgated here, and there's our things that we can do in the legislative process, but it's, there again, I think we need to align ourselves, making sure one is, as I even testified at that hearing, is my concern as agricultural producer is making sure we have safe water and pure water in the component. But we have to go forward with this using sound science. And you look at some of the regulations that are being proposed, I question how sound science are being implemented on there. Are there some things that do we need to address? Do we have some bad actors out there that need to be addressed? I would say yes to that. But you know, is there's a 10% concern out there, let's address the 10%, not throw the other 90% right in the same bathtub.
Good. All right. The next question we have is, how do you expect to resolve the issue of rural roads when the majority of funding will go to larger, more traveled roads in metropolitan and urban areas? Our rural roads to transport our products are in dire need of improvements and repairs. Nice softball.
All right. If someone can come up with the answer out of this room, I'd like to see you later and talk about it. You know, being someone from rural Michigan, I represent 4 counties, 2 counties below the bridge, 2 counties above the bridge. I think part of the problem in Lansing with the road funding debate is that we have pitted ourselves rural versus urban. And there's always a fight for who's going to get the funding. There's a fight for where the dollars are going to go. The fact is, we have an infrastructure problem, not just in our more populated cities, but we have a road funding problem as well, an infrastructure problem in rural Michigan. And for me, it's about first identifying the funding source. That's number one. And you will hear critics in Lansing talk about the formula to fund our roads. And the majority of people, believe it or not, in Lansing will claim that rural Michigan, under the current formula, benefits more than even our larger populated cities. When the governor came out with her proposal last year with the 45-cent gas tax, part of my opposition to it was not simply the amount of the tax and simply going back to the pockets of our taxpayers, but when you looked at the proposal, the majority of that funding went to Southeast Michigan. And my big belief is, if we're going to ask people from northern Michigan to chip in and pay a tax, then they need to benefit from the funding as well. So when it comes to infrastructure, believe it or not, my fight, though I'm from rural Michigan, is not pitting rural versus urban. We need to first fix the funding problem. And that's that nearly $900 million a year is paid at the pump that does not go towards roads. So if everyone in this room thought about, take the past 30 years and think about what $900 million a year would have done for our infrastructure today, we would not be in the same situation. So I appreciate the question. I mean, my goal is to look out for our larger populated cities as well as rural Michigan, but fix the issue at the pump first, and then we can have every other debate when it comes to roads.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. It really is not a question of rural versus urban, as the speaker said. It's about where do we need to put resources, whether we're talking about education, where we're talking about mental health, where we're talking about criminal justice reform, where we're talking about infrastructure. We need to look at it objectively. One thing that I supported was that we have the current way of distributing road funding, and that is staying in place. This is additional bond money that the governor has proposed, or is actually implemented now, that it goes on the priority, the condition of the road too, because we do also need to be able to transport goods in all areas of the state. And when we talk about the long-term issue with our funding, we have to make sure that when you take off the sales tax at the pump, and I agree it's very clean, you can't do it on the backs of kids and teachers. So that $900 million goes to our schools. And we've already had study after study that says we are underfunding education. So when you take that off, you have to make sure that you have a way to generate new revenue to backfill that shift. So not only is it schools, that we all have schools where we live, but it's also local communities too, to be able to provide services. So we have to look at this in totality and say, what solves the problems that we have without creating new problems? And that's why it's a complex issue, and why we have to come to the table and not look at it as a geographical divide, but look at it as a funding challenge that we have in this state, and what's the best way to solve it that doesn't leave anybody behind in this state, regardless of where they live.
I guess I would just add that in a time of divided government, it's incumbent upon us up here and all of our colleagues in the legislature, as well as the governor's office, to come together and to work through those difficult issues in a way that's fair to all of our communities. And so obviously last year was a bit of a rough start in divided government, and it's going to take a renewed commitment to being willing to sit down and talk about those things. As the speaker mentioned, if we do take that $900 million that we are collecting at the pump that goes into other things, we do need to find a way to figure out what happens to our schools and education. And my constituents, no matter where they live, are quite concerned about education and skilled trades, and those dollars that we could be putting into roads would have to come out of somewhere else in our budget if we don't find a way to raise additional revenue. And then the question becomes, what is the fairest way to do that? So those are difficult conversations that we should be having on your behalf as our constituents. It is our responsibility to find those solutions. And so I'd be happy, as the speaker said as well, if you've got some great ideas for us, see us after the panel. But we definitely have our work cut out for us.
I'll be very quick. I can't believe I'm going to make this statement here on the stage in front of Michigan Farm Bureau, because 100 years ago this organization was formed over road funding and making sure that it wasn't based on the property values. But I look at the rural road funding issue as something that I take example we do in Ottawa County. In Ottawa County, we have a county millage for half a mil. That produces $5 million annually. I know just to the south of us, Allegan County, they have a millage and it produces even additional dollars. 20-some counties in the state have that type of component. If we would have matching dollars at the state level to a half a mil, that would require $350 million, and I believe that's possible here when we're talking these billions of dollars we do in Lansing. That we could have matching grants for that. So like in Ottawa County, that $5 million over a 10-year period of time generates $50 million. These are all local dollars for our local roads. And so if the state would come as a willing partner to, as you know, incentivize that possibility, think of how we can really change the dynamic of our local roads while we still have locally produced dollars and having those controls. So I'll just bring that out, even at a Michigan Farm Bureau convention, and realizing 100 years ago your organization was based on making sure that, you know, that was not the way to go about it. But, you know, at this point in time, some creative thinking needs to occur. Thank you.
And if I can just add quickly that it's not just rural roads that don't get funded, it's also cities and municipalities that are not part of this bonding funding source, right? So it's not just a problem for counties, it's a problem for anything that's not a state road. So in Grand Rapids, we've used a local income tax continuation of 1.5% to help make up for the failure of the state to kick in more. And I think many local communities will be searching for local options, as Raj suggested, at the county level. So there are multiple solutions to this. And in the absence of a comprehensive solution for infrastructure at the state level, I think we're going to have to explore all of those kinds of options. And finally, I don't think that anybody in state government would not acknowledge that the bonding proposal is a partial solution to the infrastructure issues that we face as a state. We know it's not a comprehensive, long-term, sustainable solution, but it is one of the few things that was a tool that the governor chose to exercise. So I think we all recognize that this is not a done deal and that we have more work to do.
You know, if I can make, since the good senator got a rebuttal, I may take one myself, okay? So I want to be very clear on a topic here when I talk about taking the sales tax at the pump and phasing that out and ensuring that money goes towards roads. I want to be very clear about something. No one here or no one in the House chamber or Senate chamber is advocating that we turn back the clock on education funding. And I would encourage you to look at the first House budget that we passed last year. We did a 2-year phase out of sales tax at the pump and ensured that schools actually got an increase. Here's the underlying question. Here's the elephant in the room. We need more funding for roads. Are we going to prioritize first and find areas that we can save? And if we think infrastructure and education are two very important topics, which I do, fund them first. Fund them first. Work our state budget like you are forced to work your family budget. Are we going to prioritize, or are we just going to raise taxes? So no one wants to cut education funding, but I'm a proponent of let's fund infrastructure and let's fund education first, rather than always politicizing them, because every single time you get a request to raise your taxes, what's it for? Education or roads. Why? Because everything else gets funded first. I think it's lazy budgeting.
And I think that's, that really goes to speak about how complex this is. And again, we have a lot of priorities in the state, of course, infrastructure and education, but what about mental health that we just mentioned just a few minutes ago? So it really is sitting down at the table together and looking at it holistically, and where can we actually have agreement on priority, but where do we just need to really rethink our revenue streams in this state? We have serious, serious problems to solve, and we have to have a lot of different options to talk about honestly with you, with our constituents, but also among ourselves. That is what you elected us to do, is to have these difficult conversations. But we have mental health, we have criminal justice, we have agriculture, we have so many things at this state. You have to be mindful of all of them when you have these difficult conversations.
Good, all right, thanks. So I got another road question. No, I'm just, So we all know that labor is a pretty important topic to a lot of our members out here in order to get our crops harvested or milk cows or whatever it may be. So we have two questions. I'm going to try to combine them for you guys. So what is being done to provide CTE education in the public school systems and post-high school to educate our workforce? And is there interest in giving perks to small businesses that hire 15 to 18-year-olds to get them the tools and resources and experience to enter the workforce?
I think there's a lot of work being done to make sure that every child, as well as every worker, has opportunities to work in these different areas. The governor's proposed funding of the Reconnect program that helps older adults or adults reconnect with skilled trades and have the skills that are needed in a lot of different areas. We have put a much more of an emphasis on career technical education in our schools, and our funding reflects that, so I'm very proud of that work. We're also doing a lot more with our organized labor partners as well. They have fantastic apprenticeship programs. We have to make sure that they are accessible. And we also have to make sure that we're broadening our programs to include small business as well. A lot of times we implement programs that are for employers of hundreds of employees or thousands of employees, where, again, the heart of a community is the small business owners, including farmers, of course. And we have to make sure that we are providing these opportunities, and we're funding them as well. Another funding issue, too, to making sure that we are giving opportunity for everyone in the state, regardless where they live.
Yeah, so I concur with what Democrat Leader Gregg said in the fact that this is an education issue. I referenced it earlier. 10 years ago in Michigan, there were no jobs available. Now you see help wanted signs across the entire state. Doesn't matter where you're from, I know the signs are out there, because we have jobs available. We just don't have the trained workforce that's ready to assume those available jobs. And I think at the heart of it, it's we've done ourselves a disservice as a community, maybe even as a country, by conditioning our young kids to think that in order for them to be successful, they have to graduate from college. Not every student needs to go to college, and we try to fit them into this college cubicle. The fact is, every kid doesn't need to go to college, but I do think every kid deserves a career path, and we can help them find that even in high school. So we've done a couple things. Leader Gregg referenced the Reconnect program that the governor has focused on. I referenced earlier training those who are looking to re-enter the workforce through the correction system. We can educate even adults to take these jobs that are available, but we can also focus on the high schools as well. Last year, or 2 years ago, we passed a $100 million Marshall Plan. That was funding directed towards education in our high school, towards CTE programs. We do need to ensure that kids in our high school also know that there are real opportunities outside of college. I think we also need to look at providing the same financial opportunities for kids going to college in comparison to a trade school. Listen, kids, I was a high school teacher for 6 years. A lot of times they look for, where am I going to get a grant to go to college? They need the same opportunities for a trade school as they do for a four-year university. And we need to incentivize these kids to get in. As for the question on partnering with local businesses to hire younger age adults, absolutely. I'm very open for a partnership. I will tell you this, many of these incentives, many of these grand plans going around our country on raising the minimum wage over and over and over and over again. I'm from northern Michigan. That's where tourists go. Every time that's raised, you know what that does? It forces another teenager out of a job. And we need to let the free market work. So I'm happy to partner with small businesses to do that, and it's a joint venture. It's about educating adults to take the jobs, but also getting into our high schools. And I think this is an area where you can see some mutual agreement. We can go get the job done.
I would add that we know that whether you call it college or any kind of post-secondary credential, we know that our young people need to have something in order to be successful in life. Going out into the world with just a high school diploma is really no longer a viable option for most students if they want to be able to move up and make a good salary and support a family. So we need to make sure that there are ways for every single student to take the path that is right for them. We talk about, often the conversation when we have on these topics tends to kind of pit college path against the other path of non-college. And it's really not that simple. We need to make a pathway for every single student to go on to some sort of post-secondary credential. And for a lot of those kids who start with some sort of credential that is short of a college education, they will eventually get through college as well, and that could serve them very well. So when we talk about those credentials, we need to talk about things that are stackable, things that they can build on, things that they can move up in their careers, and that is not any different in things like ag. The other thing I would say that we need to do is we can't keep thinking about rural professions as something for only rural people, right? We need to start thinking about making those opportunities available and talking about those kinds of interesting jobs with kids who live in cities like Grand Rapids. My daughter is studying horticulture, and mostly she's been mowing my lawn and planting my vegetable garden for the last 18 years. But she knows that that is something she is really interested in, and when she started learning about that, you know, there weren't opportunities for 4-H like I had when I was growing up. There weren't opportunities for shadowing different farm folks. And so she's been talking with relatives and getting some exposure, that kind of thing. But it's really difficult for us to think about. I think we have to break down the barriers of urban-rural, and when we start talking to our kids about what we would like to prepare them for. And the same goes for students who are in rural areas who want to go to college. Some of them don't want to just be tracked into a CTE thing with an agriculture focus, and that's okay. We need to make sure that we're educating every single kid and putting them on a path for success, and that we have enough kids pursuing the right professions that they'll find good jobs that lead to happy, healthy lives and strong communities, whether they're urban or rural.
I'll be brief at this here. One is I just want to thank Michigan Farm Bureau. I served 6 years in the House before moving to the Senate, and it was Michigan Farm Bureau grassroots policy that led me in my guidance on how to address this when we developed policy. And it was the work of this organization that was on the spearhead of this, moving it forward. Because, a decade ago, this was not the conversation that was generally being had. And you were the spearhead. You were the ones that started to generate the question on this here to move it, and others are now following through. I think for the key motivation is for the young people to have respect. We need to instill respect into these jobs. That's the greatest, I think, it gives me great joy and pleasure when I go into a high school and see some of those members on the career tech items there, and they may have those robotic skills, and they're treated just like a winning football team or those, and that's what level we have to bring it to. And also I see a blue jacket out here today, and that's that process too. Thank you for attending. But I think to build on what Senator Brinks has indicated, the FFA program, that just doesn't need to be in our rural communities, but I think some of the fastest growing chapters are in our urban communities, such as we need to incentivize the FFA in Detroit and in Grand Rapids areas, and that's where we can start moving the needle and bringing that additional talent, because our populations are decreasing in our rural communities, but yet we do have growth in our urban areas, and that's where we're going to find our new talent, and that's where I think we need to put some of our attention to.
And if I could just add one more point to that. Thank you, Senator. Again, when we talk about our education system, it starts much earlier than high school. And we have to make sure that we provide the opportunities for our students to explore all these different paths, these different careers as well. In elementary school, in middle school, I actually had a lot of friends in FFA. I laughed that that was one of the only election I ever lost was for FFA Queen in high school. I was the runner-up. But anyway, if kids, girls in particular, they decide when they're in middle school whether they're interested in math or other different areas. So we have to work with our educators, with our teachers, to make sure that they're being exposed to a lot of different areas. And when we constantly over-test our kids, and we spend too much time in the classroom with very set curriculum instead of letting the educators, the teachers teach. I think that's another thing we really have to get at the heart of our education system as well, so that we can have that time to explore with our young people.
Good. I'm getting the shepherd hook signal, so I apologize we didn't get to all the questions today, but we're trying to stay on point for this conference. So I want to thank the panelists for a great discussion. We appreciate you being here and listening to the voices of our Michigan members and our farmers that are in attendance, and we look forward to working with you in the coming year. Let's give them all a round of applause. So at this time, we're going to take a brief pause in the program to make some stage adjustments. So please do not leave the room, and we'll be back with you just very shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of Michigan Farm Bureau, Carl Bednarski.
Boy, that was quick. I didn't even have to tell you if I can have your attention for this time. So, in cleaning up a little bit, first of all, I want to say thank you, Mike, for hosting the panel that was here with the leadership from the state. Great job on doing that. Now, also, traditionally, the Lansing Legislative Seminar has been a state-level focus. But this year, we have the rare opportunity to welcome some special guests from Washington, D.C. After all, most of the issues facing agriculture transcend state and federal boundaries. January 2020 was one of those for the Farm Bureau history books. President Trump and Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue joined us at the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual meeting, and their visit came on the heels of a new Clean Water Act rule, providing clarity and certainty for farmers by better defining waters of the United States. Absolutely. Soon thereafter, President Trump approved USMCA, the new trade deal between U.S., Canada, and Mexico. That agreement is expected to increase America's farm exports by $2 billion. And what a pump in the arm for Michigan being so close to our neighbor to the north. Thanks to their efforts, we also have new agreements with China and Japan, providing additional agricultural markets. You know, we waited a long time. We had a tough year, but we're seeing the fruits of those efforts. We're seeing the weight, the patience that agriculture had, the struggles, and these new trade agreements, and it's a bright future for agriculture. We look forward to continuing our work with Congress, the Trump administration, and the USDA. And with that one special announcement, the one special friend of mine from the USDA, I'd like to introduce our Secretary of the Agriculture, Mr. Sonny Perdue.
How you doing?
Hey, everybody. How's the Michigan Farm Bureau doing? Good? All right. Thank you, Carl. I'm good to be here with you all back in Michigan again, and thank you. I didn't realize this was such an auspicious occasion, but you all look good out there today, and thank you very much for coming. You do have a special guest, and I'm not him, but I'm going to introduce him. So, you know, as I travel around the country, we were just in a diner. Everybody been to the Fleetwood Diner? Just down the road, we were there. You should have seen Vice President Prince work that crowd. I mean, it was amazing. Just a people's person out there as he dealt with people individually where they are. And as I travel all around this country, people tell me, time after time, from the south to the north to the east to the west, you tell President Trump and Vice President Pence to keep doing what they're doing because we like it. Do you like it? Right. I've been in agriculture most of my life, and I can never remember an administration of the federal government talking about agriculture so much. I just can never, you know, it's just amazing to me how this guy from New York City and this guy from Indiana just married up and really talking about agriculture. I want to just talk about a few things that you know that have happened out here over recent times. There's no way I can do all of it, but I want to just talk about a few. Carl talked about one, and the Vice President's going to talk about one. You know about the Obama-era WOTUS rule that talked about your dishes, right? How they were federal waterways. Where is it? Gone. They ushered in tax reform that virtually eliminated the unfair death tax for farmers and ranchers. They approved year-round use of E15 and ensured that 15 billion gallons will equal 15 billion gallons in the 2020 marketplace. And just think about the crops that you grow here in Michigan, a very diversified agricultural state. In 2019 alone, American beef, dairy, wheat, blueberries, eggs gained access or expanded markets in places like India, Vietnam, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, China, Tunisia, Japan, South Korea, European Union, and others. We hear about the Phase 1 Big China deal. We hear about USMCA. But we're not stopping there. We're going around the world trying to promote and sell the products that you all do such a great job doing. Just the Japan deal that didn't get all that much attention cut tariffs on current trade on $7 billion of ag exports. You know what that means for Michigan? $150 million trade deficit destination for Michigan food and ag producers right here. And that's going to continue to grow because the Japan deal continues to lower tariffs along with all the other countries there. So, as you know, when Vice President Pence and President Trump ran for the White House, they made it clear that NAFTA needed a housekeeping, and they've done it. Passing USMCA was signed into law thanks to their tenacity. And I know Michigan dairy farmers will be excited to know the Canadian access here. That was one of the things that really troubled the President and Vice President as we saw being shut out of the Canadian dairy market. And let me add this about China. When this administration took a strong stand against their untrading practices, some economists proclaimed, as you know, there was a doom for the American economy and a revolt by U.S. farmers. Guess what? You stuck with him, and by ag community stood proud with the President Trump and Vice President Pence as they stood with you and delivered a bonanza of a deal with the China for the future, and it's going to be great for our U.S. agriculture. You know, I could go on and on, but you didn't come to me here to hear me. But I just want to tell you, my job here is to introduce the one person who was there and had the ear of the president when these decisions and accomplishments happened. He was Indiana governor, as you know, governor of a farm state where agriculture was pretty important. Who do you think was there whispering in his president's ear about all these kind of deals and encouraging him? President Trump could not have had a better wingman when it came to agricultural issues than he's had, and I think you've seen that. So someone who deserves a lot of thanks of urging the president on and knowing the immense impact that these decisions have on American agriculture, that's Vice President Mike Pence. Born just south of here in Columbus, Indiana, Vice President Pence is the son of a farm state. He actually, as you've heard, probably grew up with a cornfield in his backyard. He knows what it takes to farm. Watching the full farming cycle was meaningful to him, and he developed a great appreciation for agriculture in that state. He was raised to believe in and participate in the practice of hard work, faith, and family. From his time serving in Congress, governorship, and now as vice president, he has never forgotten those values or ideals. Vice President Pence has traveled all around the world as an unapologetic advocate for our nation and for American agriculture. And he knows how important American farmers and ranchers are to our entire community. I could go on and on about him, but let me tell you, folks, know him personally. I've never known a more decent human being that embodies the American spirit and values and ethics and faith of America than Mike Pence. Help me welcome him to the
Well, hello, Michigan. It is wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you for such a warm and generous welcome. But before you get too comfortable, I'll tell you what, and maybe it's because we both served as governors, but I have to tell you, as we look around that cabinet table, this president and I are proud of every member of this cabinet, but no one more so than the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue. Would you give him another round of applause? Stand up, Sonny. Take another bow, will you? This is an incredible champion for American agriculture, and I'm honored to be with him today. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for your kind words. My great friend, Congressman John Molinar, is with us today. You could give him a round of applause. There he is, John. Thank you. Great friend of this administration, a great champion for agriculture. And I was just chatting with Carl Bednarski in the back. I want to thank him and all of you for this warm welcome to state elected leaders who are here and to all of you who are Michigan's voice of agriculture. It is great to be back in the Great Lakes state with the men and women of Michigan Farm Bureau. Thank you so much for being here. It's good to be among so many friends and to have an opportunity to share about the progress that we've made. But before I get started, allow me to bring greetings from another friend of mine, someone who has been a champion for American farmers and ranchers every day of this administration. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. The President said not long ago, in his words, our nation was founded by farmers. Our independence was won by farmers. Our continent was tamed by farmers. Our armies have been fed by farmers and made of farmers. And throughout our history, farmers have always and will always lead the way. This president believes it, and his vice president believes it. You can count on it, Michigan Farm Bureau. We really do. So for everything that you've done, not only for Michigan but for America, I'm grateful for the opportunity just to come by and say thank you. Thank you for standing strong. Thank you for standing strong, oftentimes through very difficult and challenging times, bringing out those extraordinary values that are synonymous with the farm. This president and this entire administration have supported agriculture from the very beginning. And just as you've stood with us, I promise you, Michigan Farm Bureau, we will always stand with you. And that's true of the president, as he described himself once, as the kid from Queens. And it's also true of the vice president. Born in a small town in southern Indiana, I was raised right here in the heart of the heartland. Small town, southern Indiana, grew up with a cornfield in my backyard. I grew up among farmers. I really did. Some of my very best friends were some of the greatest family farms in Bartholomew County, Indiana. I detasseled corn. About the time I got to high school, my dad and his business partners decided to buy 100 head of cattle. And I won't let you guess what my three brothers and I were doing with shovels for most of the year. We were shoveling out anywhere we needed to. We added a couple of horses, and there was even more mucking of the stalls to be done. But all of that was great preparation for the lives that me and my three brothers would lead. Because we had an opportunity, while we didn't live on a farm, we didn't consider ourselves farmers. We learned the values that you learn through a lot of hard work, through a lot of early mornings and late nights. You know, the truth is, you look all across the heartland of this country, whether it be here in Michigan or in my home state of Indiana, we do things especially well out this way. We make things and we grow things. And here in Michigan, you've always led the way in both of those categories. It's remarkable to think for more than 100 years, the Michigan Farm Bureau has stood up for the rights of farmers. And today, thanks to your leadership, I'm told you represent more than 50,000 farms in this state alone, which produce more than 300 products. You contribute more than $101 billion to the state's economy. And as of today, Farm Bureau Michigan members actually employ nearly 1 million Michiganders. That's 1/5 of this state's workforce is agriculture. Incredible contribution. And beyond the economic impact, you contribute to this state in another great way. You know, the President and I firmly believe that while our country is many things and has always been many things, at our core, America is agriculture. What you sow, the nation reaps. What you plant bears fruit, not only all over the country, but all over the world. You know and you personify the dignity of a hard day's work. The values that echo through your communities across this state redound across the nation. They always have and they always will. You literally model every day the grit that drives our nation forward. And you, in every sense, embody the virtues and the values that are at the root of American greatness. Like a couple of people who are with us today, two seventh-generation farmers from Montgomery. They're actually brothers who are continuing a long family tradition of leadership in the agriculture community. One, I'm told, is the vice chairman of Michigan Farm Bureau State Young Farmers Committee, and the other is chairman of the Michigan Commission of Agriculture and Rural Development. Today, their farm is thriving like never before. They got about 4,000 acres in corn and 7,000 and over 70,000 hogs they handle every single year. Would you join me in recognizing two extraordinary agricultural leaders in this state, past, present, and future, Brian and Paul Pridgeon? Where are you guys? Take a stand. Stand up and take a bow. Thank you, guys. Great job. And there's another couple of brothers, I'm told, from Grand Junction who are here with us today, who've actually made a real difference in the life of this nation. They've been standing up for farmers' rights for years. Anybody that knows them a little bit knows they're not shy about talking about private property rights and what it takes to make it in agriculture. Their farm is certified to use good stewardship practice to manage water, nutrients, and wildlife habitats. So as you can imagine, when the last administration tried to take control over bodies of water as small as ditches and wet spots on their land, these two brothers took action. They spoke out at public meetings. They engaged the EPA. They let people all across Michigan know what that rule would mean to farmers like them. And I'm proud to say that thanks to their energetic efforts, Michigan Farm Bureau and Farm Bureau members all across America, their work paid off when President Donald Trump ditched the rule. The waters of the U.S. rule, as you know it, is gone. They did it. They did it. That's just great citizenship. That's great advocacy. And these two are great leaders of Michigan's Agriculture Committee. Not to mention, I'm told they sell the best fresh blueberries in the state. I don't know who said that, but I just bought a couple of blueberry pancakes from that diner, and they may well have come from that farm. Join me in thanking Tom and Larry Botke. Where are you guys? Take a bow, will you guys? Great job. Thanks. You know, Brian and Paul and Tom and Larry, I called them out today, but really they're emblematic of all of you and the farmers that you represent all across this great state. And I'm here to tell you, from early in this administration, the President's been working every day to keep the promise that he made to support America's proud family farming tradition, and that's exactly what we've done. Early in our administration, you may remember back when we were campaigning through Michigan in 2016, the President actually promised to repeal 2 federal regulations for every new federal rule put on the books. But we actually haven't done that. I've got to be honest with you. We've actually repealed 8 federal regulations for every new federal rule put in the Code of Federal Registry. True. A couple of examples. Thanks to the President's leadership, we're modernizing the NEPA regulations for the first time in 40 years. And we're already on track under the President's one federal decision plan to cut environmental review periods by more than a half. And thanks to strong support of people like Congressman John Molinari and his colleagues in the Congress, we were able to roll back the taxes on working families, small businesses, and family farms. In our very first year in office, we cut taxes across the board. We lowered the corporate tax rate. We lowered the tax rate for pass-throughs, which so many family farms are. And I'm proud to say we eliminated the death tax for nearly every family farmer in America. That's big. We also changed the expensing rules so that now farmers can deduct 100% of the cost of every piece of new equipment you buy. And I know just enough about farming to know what input costs are. And as people look at gross income in agriculture, a lot of times you have reporters that'll write up about how much farmers make, and they never talk about how much it costs to be in farming. And the changes in the expensing rules we know made a real difference for American farmers, and we're proud of it. And while we've been unleashing the full potential of the American economy through less taxes and less regulation, a greater respect for private property. This president's been fighting for free and fair trade from the first day we arrived in office. True. We've been working to open up markets to American exports, most especially agriculture, and we've had considerable success. You know, for years, one administration after another, frankly, in both political parties, stood by while we amassed extraordinary trade deficits with China. I mean, China took advantage of access to our economy while giving very limited access of what we grow and what we make to their economy. It's amazing to think when we went through our inauguration, January 20th, 2017, literally half, 500 billion, half of our international trade deficit was with China. But this president made it clear. Those days are over. The era of economic surrender to China is over. We stood strong. We stood strong, and let me just say, and I was just talking to Carl backstage about that. Michigan Farm Bureau and farmers across this country stood strong with us as the president imposed strong tariffs on China to bring them forward. And I have to tell you that the way farmers really stood in the pocket was inspiring, wasn't it, Sonny? Because the reality is that it created some uncertainty, but I heard farmers everywhere I went across the country stop me on the street and say, you know, we know it's got to be done, so we're going to stand with you while you get it done. Because you all understand what it is to do hard things, to get hard things done. And because of the strong stand that you took, because of the strong stand President Trump took, just a few short weeks ago, we signed the Phase 1 deal with China, dealing with intellectual property rights and securing $40 to $50 billion in agricultural exports to China in the next 2 years. It's a start. It's a start back. Now, we've got a ways to go. The president's made it very clear. As a part of the Phase 1 deal, we rolled back tariffs that the president had placed since September on imports from China, but the balance are all still there. And our teams are currently talking and negotiating, and I promise you we're going to continue to stand firm with China until we level the playing field for American agriculture, for American manufacturing, and for American workers. This president on trade is always going to put America first. And evidence of that, after years since NAFTA was signed into law, and I don't have to tell you all here in Michigan what the impact that NAFTA had on many communities, particularly manufacturing communities in this state. Down in Indiana, we literally saw entire communities have factories shuttered. There was one community in my old congressional district, Anderson, Indiana, that went from about 20,000 employees one day to 3 employees the next. And those jobs all moved south of the border to Mexico. And it had impacts on agriculture as well. Well, when we were campaigning through the state in 2016, our president said we could do better. He said we could renegotiate our trading relationship with Mexico and China. And there was a lot of people that were skeptical. But this president rolled his sleeves up, and I got to tell you, I was there every step of the way. I met many times with those same leaders. And I got to tell you, the man who wrote The Art of the Deal got a great deal for the American people. The USMCA is here. And it's a huge win for American farmers. Make no mistake about it. We all know the USMCA corrected much of the imbalance in manufacturing now. We think we've removed many of the incentives, intentional or otherwise, that were in NAFTA to move jobs out of this country. We think we've leveled the playing field, but this is a win. This is a win for agriculture as well. Canada's actually agreed to expand market access for American dairy, for egg, for poultry. American wheat growers will have access to a more level playing field, and we're going to sell $2.2 billion more in agriculture exports to Canada and Mexico alone. That includes 300 million in dairy exports in just the first few years. USMCA is a win for agriculture. When it's all said and done, we think it's actually going to add in the early going about 600,000 jobs in the city and on the farm, and maybe as much as $235 billion to our economy, just right out of the gate. It's just incredible what happens when you've got a president who's willing to engage our neighbors, engage countries around the world in a way that I think would resonate with every farmer in the country and every farmer gathered here today. You know, this is a president who I've watched him. He first starts with the relationship. He starts with establishing a rapport. And then, before you know it, at no particular point in the conversation, he just drops the hammer. Right? He does. You all know how that works, don't you? Right? I mean, we can be friends, but doesn't mean that business isn't business. And this is the exact approach that President Trump has taken on trade. I mean, I'll never forget. I won't say what country it was, Sonny, but I think you were in the room. And we were sitting at a table, and we were all on this one side of the table, our whole delegation, and their whole delegation was on the other side of the table. And the president sits down, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Prime Minister, great to see you." He said, "Melania loves your wife. I hope you're having a great time. How was your dinner last night?" "Great, great, great. Great to see you. We love having you here." And everybody's smiling, this and that. And he goes, "Okay, but you're killing us on cars." And that's going to stop. And I saw him do the same thing on dairy. I saw him do the same thing on agriculture. I am telling you what, you have a man who is going to keep fighting every single day for jobs and opportunities in the city and on the farm in all of our trade negotiations with countries around the world. And he's going to do it like a winner. And we're going to keep winning. That's what leadership looks like. That's what leadership looks like, and that's the leadership of President Donald Trump. So we've cut taxes, we rolled back more red tape already than any administration in American history. We've unleashed American energy. We fought for free and fair trade. And I don't have to tell you, here in the state of Michigan, this economy is booming. Since Election Day, businesses large and small across this country have created more than 7 million new jobs, new good-paying jobs, including 102,000 good-paying jobs right here in the state of Michigan. Unemployment's at a 50-year low. The unemployment rate for African Americans and Hispanic Americans has hit the lowest level ever recorded, and more Americans are working today than ever before in the history of this country. So we've made great progress. And I'm here to let you know that this administration just considers that a good start. I mean, you have a president with a boundless confidence in the American people. And a boundless belief in the capacity of Americans to achieve and to create opportunities, if given the opportunity with the application of common sense free market principles to do that. We're ready to go to work to make sure America's farmers and ranchers prosper like never before. We're going to stand strong with you no matter what political philosophy or political winds are blowing. President Donald Trump, this vice president, this administration will always stand with the American farmer. I promise you. And we'll always honor what you do, because I have to tell you, this small town kid and this big city president, we both get it. We understand the challenges and the complexities and the extraordinary ability and courage that it takes to succeed in farming today. I mean, it's remarkable to think that we actually live in a time when some major national candidates are denigrating America's farmers. I mean, one candidate, I'm sure you all saw it, one of their other side's candidates for president said, "I can teach anybody to be a farmer." He said, "It's a process. You dig a hole, you put a seed in, you put dirt on top, you add water, up comes corn." I have never heard a more uninformed, ignorant statement about agriculture in my life. I mean, really and truly. And this isn't just coming from a guy, you know, that was governor of the state where Purdue University is located, right? Or I know we're not far from Michigan State. Good heavens. Somebody tell him to Google agri-science. Take a ride on a combine and see how many screens you're looking at, right? I mean, GPS satellites, water moisture in the ground. I mean, you all you're the breadbasket of the world because this is a high-tech operation. And what the range of knowledge that you have to have in finance and technology and soil management, it's extraordinary. I mean, I'm always in awe. I'm always in awe whenever I visit farmers and see the extraordinary range of information that you take. You're small business owners, and yet you're out there with your sleeves rolled up, getting the work done early and getting the work done late. You know, for all of that kind of commentary, the other day I couldn't help but put out on social media a different attitude about agriculture. And it came from one of my favorite radio broadcasters many years ago. It was about 40 years ago. Paul Harvey, I think, was at a Farm Bureau gathering when he spoke these words. And let me quote them generously, because I think it's the right view of the American farmer. Paul Harvey said, on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise, and he said, I need a caretaker. Someone willing to get up before dawn, work all day in the fields, then go to town, stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. Somebody who plowed deep and straight and not cut corners. Somebody to seed and weed and feed and breed and rake and disc and plow and plant. Somebody who would bale a family together with the strong, soft bonds of sharing, who'd laugh, then sigh, and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer. I believe this nation has been blessed in countless and innumerable ways. But God made a farmer, and God made an American farmer. And you have been a blessing to America every day of our nation's history. And it's not just been what you produce, it's not just been those extraordinary economic numbers, the complexity of farming, but it's also, I think, the greatest contribution that farmers have made through the long and storied history of this nation has been to the character of our nation. It's remarkable to me how many times in that book that I try and stop and read every morning that the Nazarene actually points to the farmer, to consider the farmer, the one who tills the soil, when trying to teach us patience and teach us the hard virtues of faith and generosity and neighborliness. I really believe this with all my heart. It's maybe more important in these divided times than ever before that the family farm prospers and thrives, because it's in so many ways the wellspring of our nation's character. I just want you to know that as you contribute to the vitality of this state and our nation, that your character and your faith contribute even more. So as I close, let me just say thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome today. Thank you for the privilege of serving as your vice president. It's the greatest honor of my life. It truly is. And to all of you who work in agriculture, whose labor and life's work can be found in the food that we eat and the character of this nation, thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. And to all of you who are even now considering a career in agriculture, these bright young people who might have noticed I was wearing my FFA tie today. just know there's a great future in American farming. We're counting on you to lead it. I truly do believe that agriculture is a quintessential American field. So thanks for believing in it. Thanks for living it out. Thanks for making the hard choices. And just know that on behalf of the President of the United States and this Vice President, our Secretary of Agriculture, and all the men and women of this administration, and a grateful nation, keep doing what you're doing. Keep growing it, keep raising it, keep being it. For as the American farm is strong, America is strong. And as the American farm is greater than ever before, we'll keep America great. Thanks, everybody. God bless you. God bless America.
Well, if everyone could find their seats, we still have a little bit of a program to continue on with here. I just want to say, you know, what a great opportunity for all of you to be participants in what you've seen here today. When you heard from the kind words from Secretary Perdue, from our Secretary of Agriculture, and then to have the Vice President take the time to give us an address that you could tell was from the heart. And he mentioned that after the address, that he said, this one is the easy one. This one here, I know who this audience is, and this was from the heart. But also to see that individual come up here and interact with you, to shake your hands and take those selfies. So what a great team we have there, and a great opportunity to have not only the Secretary of Agriculture, but our Vice President in attendance at our Lansing Legislative Seminar. I know that's a tough act to follow, but the show must continue. And at this time, I'd like to welcome District 1 Director Bridget Leach to the podium to present a special opportunity. So, Bridget.
Well, if that didn't make your day, huh? Our Excellence in Grassroots Lobbying Award is presented annually to a County Farm Bureau for outstanding efforts to inform and influence elected officials. As a local, I'm especially proud to announce that this year's recipient is my own Kalamazoo County Farm Bureau. They've worked relentlessly to educate leaders about issues impacting the ag industry with the aim of seeing our policy come to fruition. Please turn your attention to the screen to learn more about their efforts.
The Kalamazoo County Farm Bureau is being recognized for their work on a variety of issues, including advocating to the State Agriculture Commission to bolster the right to farm by voting to remove zoning conformance from the site selection GAMS. Working with Congressman Upton on a roundtable event last summer meant to drive home the dire situation on the region's farms brought about by adverse weather by touring several area fields. Co-hosting a farm tour for elected officials with the local conservation district, including stops at a commercial greenhouse, a fruit and vegetable agritourism operation, a large commercial grain operation, and a dairy farm. Including elected officials at regular events like their monthly board meetings, policy development sessions, and the county annual meeting. Let's hear what a few of their elected officials had to say about their work.
My experience with Kalamazoo County Farm Bureau has been phenomenal from day one. I will tell you that, you know, what's been important to me is that I didn't really have a strong agricultural background. When I came into office, I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't really have that experience as much, and so for me it was interacting with the members. It was speaking with them about what issues are important to them, about how what we do here in Lansing impacts their lives in my community, and how we can better create legislation that helps our local farmers. And it was those hands-on approaches. It was the visit to the farms for me, the ride-alongs that I did. It was just exciting to see that take shape in my community and how the things that we did legislatively here in Lansing really impacted the folks involved in agriculture back home. And so it was certainly a learning curve, continues to be a learning curve for me. Like I say, I tell people all the time, my background was not strong in agriculture. And so really bringing me up to speed on the issues that were important to them has been so important and critical to my career here in Lansing.
So when I have to make decisions for the state of Michigan, we recognize the fact that those decisions impact everybody. Having strong relationships with our farmer constituents gives a different perspective, and not just on farm issues, but when we're talking about our schools, our roads, our water. So having that diverse set of voices at the table and the work that Farm Bureau does to make sure those voices are included in the conversation is really key and helps me make good decisions.
My local Farm Bureau was always and has always been incredibly engaged. One thing I always enjoy is in the visits in February that you have up here for the Farm Bureau Day up here that we have. We always have a huge turnout for my county here, and they're always connecting me with issues that are relevant and important in the community. And even some of those issues, by the way, over the years have been local issues. They've been, hey, Brant, could you put a call into the county commissioners for us? Could you, we've had a number of different issues over the years, but it's always been, for me, that one-on-one direct communication with folks, them calling me, talking to me, hey, here's what's going on, here's what's happening. That really was able to sort of inform me and my legislative priorities throughout the course of the year to ensure that I was focusing on the needs that were important to them.
I think about the fact that there's a ton of folks in my community who've told me like they've never seen how the food that they eat is grown, right? That there's a disconnect sometimes between the food that we eat and where it comes from. And I think it's so important that folks have that sort of diverse set of backgrounds and full knowledge, because our lives are connected, whether we're in the city or in the country. And it's important that we're pulling folks together because at the end of the day, there's always going to be more that we have in common than pulls us apart.
Kalamazoo Farm Bureau, congrats again. #1 award from the State Farm Bureau for excellence in grassroots lobbying. I know that I can say that I have truly appreciated the input over the years, virtually every month. Folks not only coming to Washington, but when we've done our farm tours back home this last year with the terrible rains and everything else that were going on. But you've been recognized out of all 83 counties as #1. So from my standpoint, as a strong supporter of the Farm Bureau, keep it up.
Congratulations to the Kalamazoo County Farm Bureau on being nominated and selected to receive Michigan Farm Bureau's 2020 Excellence in Grassroots Lobbying Award.
Let's welcome to the stage members of the Kalamazoo County Farm Bureau to accept their hard-earned award. To further support their work, Kalamazoo County will also receive a $500 grant for ongoing advocacy activities. Congratulations, Kalamazoo, for your outstanding efforts. That's what leadership looks like as well. Before we adjourn for the afternoon sessions, let's welcome to the stage Rob Anderson. Rob's certainly not a new face to Farm Bureau. He was recently selected to lead your Farm Bureau's government relations team following the promotion of Matt Smigo to Associate Director of the Public Policy and Commodity Division. Matt joins Sarah Black in leading Michigan Farm Bureau's work implementing your policy in Lansing and Washington, D.C. Please welcome Rob to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Director Leach, for that introduction. Pretty amazing day so far, and another amazing thing is that we're about on time, so we're excited about that. So this afternoon, we're going to be moving into our policy discussions and our breakout sessions to dig deeper into some of those policy priorities that we have messages to convey to our legislators this afternoon. So real quickly before we do that, I'd like to take a moment and just introduce our state government relations team. They're hiding in the side here. If I could have them just come over here where you can all see them. And the program moves faster, the faster they move. So anyway, they're shy. Give them some encouragement if you would. Thank you. So the members of our state government relations team are going to be helping you through your breakouts today. Rebecca Park, Andrew Vermeesh, and Matthew Kapp. Matt was actually very instrumental in the activities earlier today with the fundraiser and also with one of the breakouts this afternoon. So again, just great team members and just appreciate having them. So give them a round of applause today. I would be remiss if I didn't just mention a couple of other people. This program today was a pretty big undertaking, and it came off extremely well from my perspective, but I just want to raise a couple of people in your attention. Nicole Severy is in the side here. If she could raise her hand, maybe come over here where we can see her. Melissa Palma was also very instrumental in working with the Vice President's team. So Melissa, thanks for all your hard work. And an outgoing shout out to Matt Smigo. He's doing a breakout today too. So Matt's in the side there. So just a few things to share about this afternoon's program. We're going to start our first sessions as soon as we can get there. It's almost 2 o'clock, and we're hoping to start within the next 5 or 10 minutes. So if you could move promptly to your first session. You have your choices of topics. We are going to rotate the sessions twice, so you can kind of pick your two favorite that you would like to see today. But we will have the same 4 sessions for both rotations, so you'll be able to at least get 2 of those under your belt before we get to the reception this afternoon. We're going to take a break around 2:45. We're going to let you catch your breath and also catch up with one another. We've got some coffee and also treats from the Michigan State University Dairy Store on tap for that break at 2:45. The refreshments, just so you know, they're going to be outside the meeting rooms on the 1st and 2nd floor, so they'll be close by. Our legislative reception starts promptly at 4:30. I do have one item that I would like to raise to your attention. We know that the Senate has an event later this evening, and so we may have some senators showing up early, so it's our hope that we can break that second round of breakouts closer to 4 o'clock so that you can move comfortably down to the reception room and take advantage of some of those senators want to drop in before they head to their event this evening. So if you happen to have forgotten who your legislator is, the backside of your name tag has those listed for your convenience. So hopefully you'll know who you're looking for when the reception comes. So we really appreciate your participation in the program so far. Thank you so much, and enjoy your day. We're dismissed to our breakout sessions. Thank you.